They need it? Jeez. Yeah, they need a few ball players. Whatever I can do. Actually, I'm auditioning for the
You're,
Pirates.
there you go.
If they need a guy who's 5 decades past his prime, I'm the guy for them. Hey, it's the Christmas Eve.
It sure is.
Yeah, and people have their Christmas plants out, and their certainly their poinsettias, their Christmas cacti, their Christmas trees, and some people might even be getting plants for
Yeah.
Christmas as gifts, whether they're cut flowers or even a plant in dirt. And so let's talk about the kinds of plants people might be finding as Christmas presents this year, and what they need to do with them to keep them alive through the winter months. What are some of the things that people give as Christmas plants?
Well, there, of course, there's different bulbed plants
Mm-hmm.
that they may not be flowering yet, but they may be giving the bulbs, and then, in a month or two,
Yeah.
like amaryllis would be an example of that, even daffodils.
Mm-hmm.
But they may have purchased the bulbs, and then they may have them shipped too at various times. That's another, at the appropriate time, they may.
Mm.
So you may almost get a gift card. It'll arrive when it should arrive,
Ah, there you go.
kind of a
There you go.
deal, and then you'll get that. But yeah, amaryllis is a real common example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very showy flowers, but that can add some winter cheer,
There you go.
some bright colors during the winter months.
Sure.
So that would be an example. Any kind of house plants as well. So, and most of those are all of a tropical origin that need warmer temperatures. And then we have the spectrum on the light needs. Some need high
Mm-hmm.
light, some need filtered light, and some can even grow in in our most of our conditions that we have in our houses.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah. They
which is
do need
puts us a lot
humidity
of
though,
shade.
don't they?
Yeah, a lot of yes, probably overall. Those need higher humidity than some of our outdoor plants
Yeah.
do.
And
But
and
but
houses in the wintertime, they aren't humid
no,
places. They dry out.
no,
So,
they usually aren't. And depending on your heating system, that greatly
hmm,
influences.
oh, if you have forced air,
Yeah.
forced
Now
air
some
heat.
people have humidifiers on their furnaces that help
Hmm.
add some moisture back in. Other people don't. Sometimes wood fired stoves
They'll dry
that
out.
can you can dry out in a hurry.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I have forced air, and it's amazing how quickly.
yeah.
And then your containers, just what uh, what window they're in,
Hmm.
whether they're facing east or north or west or south, that will also influence how often you may need to pay attention and water
Sure.
plants. And then the container they're in, and then the potting soil that they're in. So a
Mm.
lot of the succulents will be in almost sandier soils,
Okay.
less less organic matter in there,
Less
more
loamy.
sandy, just because of the drainage. They don't like wet feet,
Hmm.
so some potting soils can hold moisture longer, and that's okay for some things. And but a lot of those succulents don't like that. They want good drainage, so
Hmm.
you have to really watch those more closely
Hmm.
and kind of get in tune then with now that we're in season, just to watch those. Do I need to check
Yeah.
them every couple of days, or is once a week enough? And a lot of those plants too will slow down a little bit too, just because our day length is shorter, and if we don't have supplemental lighting uh, to make those, to keep the light bright for 12 to 14 hours a day, if we're getting our typical day length
Yeah.
that we are now, then they slow down a little bit too. They don't need watered as often, even though the soil may be a little bit dry.
Hmm.
We may not
They're
need
getting
to
what they
keep
need.
them doused. So it comes down to each plant uh, and what their condition, what needs they have,
Yeah.
and then just trying to pay attention to that.
Getting that humidity back into the air becomes the
Yeah.
challenge for you. My dad had the wood stove that always seemed to be at about let's say 149 degrees, and in the wintertime. And he would just keep a nice ceramic pot of water on top of it
Yep.
to do that job, to do the humidifying. But where that's not the problem, but it's just general dry air, and you have forced air heat like you have, what are ways that people get the humidity back?
Right. So if we can put plants where there isn't a register, and of course, oftentimes the register is right in front of the windows,
Yeah, and it's
and then that's
blowing
right
on
where
them.
right, and that's right where the plants need to be also to get the most light they can. But even having there are deflector shields
Oh, okay.
for those floor vents,
Hmm.
so that you can adjust instead of it coming out and going straight up, you can kick it out so it pushes it out
Uh-huh.
away from the plants and along the floor. So that's one option there, if we don't have the choice of moving things around a bit.
Hmm.
And then, of course, creating that environment right around the plant. So having bigger saucers or trays where we can put water in a tray.
Okay, so the plant is sitting in a tray, and you've got water in
Yeah,
the
so
tray.
it's not the bottom of the pot is not sitting down in that water,
Hmm.
but it's raised above that. So even just you could use cookie sheets,
Uh-huh.
of course, that have edges on them,
Yeah.
and then put gravel in there,
So it's the
and
plant
then
is
put
sitting on the
moisture in
gravel,
there. Yeah,
and there's
and most
water in the tray.
right, and then most of the time too, we'll have a lot of the plastic pots have built-in trays underneath,
Yeah, they do.
within the pot, so
They
that
do. Yeah.
so that it's always, if there's extra water that goes through, which we like to have a little, when we water, we want to have a little extra water go through,
Hmm.
and collect in the bottom. And then with clay, any of the clay pots, we usually have saucers that go underneath
Sure.
those containers, just to help collect any
Yeah.
excess moisture that goes through, because it's a pain in the neck to clean that up.
Now, if you're
If you
using
don't,
the tin pie pan,
yes,
that tin foil pan,
yeah, sure,
some of
you
those
can,
are perforated, boys and girls. So you're pouring water into those babies. You might say, "Oopsie daisy," and cause a problem there. But those are some of the issues that you get into when you get into wintertime. Now, I wanted
that's
to
right.
ask you about when we get snow, if
Mhm.
that ever happens, and that you've got a plant sitting in the winter, you get that big bright
Yeah.
snow. And then the sun comes out the next day and bounces off that snow with a really bright glare. Um, does that help or harm the plant, or does the plant just adjust to it no matter
Yeah,
what?
yeah, most of our plants outside will be in some stage of dormancy,
Hmm.
so it's not going to be a big influencer there,
Yeah, but
because they've
inside
already.
plants,
But inside plants, um, just on a sunny day where you get more light,
yeah,
usually that's still not going to be enough to
it's not intense enough.
no
Okay,
cause an issue.
all right. Could burn your retinas out, but it won't.
Yes.
A little bit of glare happening there. People
So you
also
could.
are thinking about plotting out their gardens for next
Yeah.
year. Gardening took when 2020 came along and brought with it the pandemic, and people were forced to be at home. They started planning out gardens, and maybe they just okay, I'm going to put it over there, and then they decided that's not the best place in the world for it because we found out it has issues, so they want to move it. Plotting out your garden right now is something that people are doing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Good time of year. You might not do it today or tomorrow, but
Mhm.
um,
Why not?
sometime in the next few weeks, it's good to think about that. Just especially if you have to move it or
Yeah.
adjust it a little bit, because you might have some work to do to get that going, and need to
Hmm.
think about the timing. And,
Hmm.
and of course, in the spring, some springs are drier, some springs are wetter,
Yeah.
and so that will influence when you can get in there if there's sod on there, to get that removed or turned under.
Yeah.
It is good to turn it under so that material is able to decay. So
Hmm.
sometimes we want to do fall plowing or winter plowing.
Yeah.
Um, if the ground's dry enough to do that, that can gain you some time. That if you can even spade it,
Hmm.
as long as we don't have potential erosion issues, and the ground's not frozen, during the winter months, you can get out there and turn that sod, and even if you're doing it by hand, and that also we can gain some help from Mother Nature with our freeze and thaw cycles that will help break up that ground, break down the roots, and make it easier then in the spring when you do your final tilling in preparation, make it easier to do that then.
I want to ask you this. We only have a couple of moments left. I should ask you this earlier. I let my plastic down where I had my plants this year, and I've done that in the past, and I think it's worked out well in the springtime. In where I had my seeds in the upper part of the garden, though, didn't have plastic down because the seeds have to poke up through. And since the season ended, it's just been overtaken by weeds. So I'm going to have some extra work to do in the upper part of the garden here in the spring.
Yeah. But, where you didn't have the weed mat down.
Plastic, yeah. And that's a fairly common thing, but it shouldn't be a problem, right? I can just turn that under.
And some of that, you can just turn it under. And some of those weeds might be winter annuals that will die anyhow. In the spring they're going to complete their life cycle, go to seed. Especially, chickweed's a common example of that. It's out there now, green as can be.
Yeah.
It just laughs at the cold. And then it'll produce flowers, produce seed. And so by the time you want to plant, the seeds will be there to germinate with the seeds that you're planting.
Yeah. What a mess I'm going to have in the spring. Bob, thanks so much.
But that's, and actually you can let a flush of growth, weeds.
Yeah. Well, it becomes a cover crop.
Germinate in the spring, and then do a light tilling.
Yeah.
And that can help reduce some of that seed population.
All righty. There you go. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for being with us this morning and through the course of the year. We'll do it if you're available next Friday on Christmas or New Year's Eve.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Best of the family, too.
Same thing. Same to you.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.